you're all here today. You know, it's really an appropriate topic because baseball season is starting to get full here. For those who haven't been to Porterville College baseball or softball game yet, please do make sure you go. For most of you, you think baseball, what you remember for the rest of your life is steroids and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. But one of the major impacts of baseball happened back in the 40s with what we're here today. Back in the 40s, I think, was when Miss Melly had graduated from college. Glad to see you here. I'm sorry, I couldn't pass that up. Anyway, our presenter today, both of you know David Bezayiff, who's a history instructor here at Porterville College. He's been here for 12 years already. And actually, David, back in the early 80s, was my boss when we both worked at Fresno State together. So we go way back. So I know if you've been in a presentation before with Dr. Bezayiff, you've always enjoyed them, and no doubt will enjoy the one today. So please welcome Dr. David Bezayiff.
Well, thank you, Steve, and Richard, and the chat program. This is kind of an exciting topic for me today. This is about Jackie Robinson, a guy who breaks a lot of barriers for a lot of people in America. So my title of my talk today is going to be what Jackie Robinson did for America. He's a 28-year-old man. We're going to use the word Negro throughout this talk because that was the word that was used then. He's a 28-year-old Negro who was not considered to be a very good ball player. He had attended UCLA for a couple of years but did not graduate. He was an outstanding football player. He was averaged 12 yards a carry when he played for the Bruins. He was an outstanding basketball player. So he was a better basketball player than a football player, and he was a better football player than a baseball player, and he was a better track player than all of those things together. And he will become the first athlete at UCLA to letter in all 4 major sports at the collegiate level. Jackie Robinson, contrary to the myth, though, is a man we're going to meet who is not necessarily a nice guy. He had a temper. He had a temper. He was an angry man, and he was an angry young man. He'd been born in Georgia, and his grandfather had been a slave. And his father had left him early in life. His wife and his 5 children, or her 5 children, she moves out to Pasadena for a better life, and he will enroll in Pasadena Public Schools. He will attend Pasadena Community College, where he will set a broad jump record that will stand for years and years in Southern California. Then he will go to UCLA. He will meet the woman who he will eventually marry. He will play in the Negro Leagues for a year and decide he doesn't like that. A friend of his will offer him a coaching job. And by 1946, he's really not sure where he's going to go with his life. But in 1946, there are some forces that are beginning to happen in America, and they are powerful forces because they are going to ultimately cause about the integration of American society at all levels. So the fellow that we're meeting today, Jackie Robinson, is going to do something single-handedly that's going to promote the desegregation of baseball, the integration of American society, and he will do it at great risk to himself, and he will have to learn how to take his anger and turn it not at people, and he's going to be called a lot of names. He will have a lot of beer bottles thrown at him before he's done. He will have a lot of his fellow players cleat him when he's driving into the base. There's a lot of physical abuse. He will deal with players who will not sit with him. He's in a segregated society, so when he travels on the bus, he's at the back of the bus. When the team meets in the best hotels and sleeps in the best hotels, he is told to go find your own hotel. When he shows up for Dodger training, he doesn't even have a Dodger uniform. So he's a man who sits down with Branch Rickey. And Rickey tells him, he says, the reason I chose you, you had a couple of years of college, UCLA. The second reason I chose you is I want that anger channeled into your baseball. Forget everybody else, but channel that anger into your playing baseball. And it's remarkable what he does with that anger. In the first year, he'll become Rookie of the Year before he's done. He'll play in 6 Major League All-Star games. He'll play in several World Series. And he'll go on later on to have a life that's really involved in the civil rights movement. He never loses his anger. As a man in his late 40s and 50s, we're going to find out he refused to salute the American flag. He refused to stand up to the national anthem in ballparks because they had no black coaches and they had fewer black players. Between 1947 and 1956, we'll have a total of 19 players. he's the first. He's a remarkable story, Jackie Robinson. So I put together, I'm always being encouraged to do the informational technology. I'm learning how to do my own CDs and DVDs. And so this is one of my productions, okay? I'm kind of excited. Chris, Craig, and the other techies have always given me a lot of help, so I want to acknowledge that right away. And Rosemary, but let's see how this works. This is a few seconds long. Here we go. There was never a law or a rule that said they could not play in the major leagues. It was rather an unwritten law. It started in the late 1890s when white ball players, and more importantly, white managers, and more importantly, white owners, made it clear that they would no longer have Negroes on the team, or would they be allowed on the field. Some eventual Hall of Famers, Cap Anderson, for example, refused to field a team if there was a Negro player on the other team. And so what started then was simply a shutting out, if you will, of black players, to the point that by the 1910s and 1920s, they knew they didn't even need to go out and try out for a team because they would not be allowed on the field. They would not be welcome. So in response to that, they formed what were called the Negro Leagues in the 1920s as a place for Negro ball players to go ahead and play the national pastime, which is baseball. And they'll do this for about 20 years. It's very famous teams, the Kansas City Monarchs, the Philadelphia Grays, the Montreal Royals, who Jackie would play a year for, and with the Kansas City Monarchs, a year with them as well. But when World War II comes along, and we have a number of blacks, Negroes who enlisted in the Army or Navy, went overseas and fought for democracy, Jackie Robinson was among them. But he has an interesting story. I said earlier that he was an angry man. He never liked people talking to him in negative terms, particularly using the N-word. He was a man who was highly, highly proud of his race, his color, and where he came from. So he enlisted in the Army, and in 1946 was made what we call a personnel officer. And he sat down to Fort Hood to do some training. And there's an altercation on the bus where he's the second lieutenant, and the bus driver is a white private. And in the middle of the bus driver thinks there's a white woman, and he orders Jackie Robinson to the back of the bus. And Jackie Robinson refuses to go to the back of the bus. And they have an altercation. And the upshot of it is that Jackie Robinson will be court-martialed for insubordination. He's a lieutenant, the bus driver's white, and a private, and they will take him and court-martial him for that offense, and because he did not sit at the back of the bus in 1946. 11 years before Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on the bus, Jackie Robinson had already done that, and he had done it while in the military. During the trial, Jackie talks about his life, and then he will reach an agreement with the military. He will be honorably discharged, and he will leave the military and that incident behind him. He never forgot that incident. Then he'll play a year, as I said, for the Kansas City Monarchs. It's a frustrating year for him. He made his teammates mad because at every stop along the way, he questioned why there was a white drinking fountain and a Negro drinking fountain, why they couldn't stay in this hotel or that hotel, why they couldn't eat in certain restaurants. And so after a year, he and his teammates had a serious falling out, and he will leave the team because of those conditions. And then eventually he'll play for Montreal, for the Royals. And the man that we saw, Branch Rickey, had been a brilliant, brilliant man who owned part of the St. Louis Cardinals, and he eventually owns part of the Dodgers. And by 1946, he's got this idea. He's got this idea that there's change that should be coming to America in the baseball area, in the stadiums. And his idea is, isn't it about time we brought the Negro players back to American League Baseball, or National League Baseball? And so he talks with his fellow owners about that, his plan to integrate baseball. 15 vote no, he votes yes, of the 16 owners. So he says, well, all right, I'll try a different path. So he begins talking about the fact that we have a large number of Negroes who are moving north and into Brooklyn. So he puts out the public plan that, well, you know what we'll do is, we're going to have a Negro team in Brooklyn, and they'll play here when the white players are at another stadium somewhere else. But that was only a plan. Behind that plan, he has quietly told a number of his confidential scouts, I want you to go out to America, and I want you to find a ball player that can make it in the major leagues. But do it very quietly. At the same time, in America, African Americans, Negroes who had been in the war were coming home and saying, folks, this is not right. We fought in France, we fought in Italy. We spilled our blood in Okinawa and Iwo Jima like everybody else, and we can't, as a race, play in America's national pastime game. Something is terribly wrong. And in the 1940s, we're going to see a lot of movement now towards civil rights. And we're going to see a lot of interest now in the notion of desegregating aspects of the military that Truman will do eventually. But no player was allowed in Major League Baseball. By 1946, they had identified a handful of black players. Monty Irvin, Satchel Paige, Ted Strong, Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb. But the name that kept surfacing all the time to the top was Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was because he'd been at UCLA. Jackie Robinson because Ricky knew he was an angry young man, but he was also a very talented athlete. And though he wasn't the best baseball players, and by the way, the Negro players, when they finally found out that it was going to be Jackie who would be sent to the farm team, Montreal, and then brought up the next year to the Dodgers, they were upset. Folks, there was a lot hinging on his success. They didn't think that he was as good as some of the other players like Monty Irvin or Ted Strong. They felt, what if this man fails? If he fails, we won't play baseball in the American leagues or National Leagues for another 30 or 40 years. So we have with us an individual that has a lot, to say the least, pressure on his shoulders. Here's somebody who's going to come to training camp, by the way, that was moved from Florida to Cuba in 1946-47 because of the segregation that was in Florida. So Ricky moves the whole team down to Havana and says, we're going to have our spring training here because when I look around Cuba, there are blacks. And Jackie, you'll feel more comfortable. When it's finally announced that Jackie would come up to the Dodgers, he was supposed to come up as a shortstop. All the Negro players knew in the leagues that he wasn't a very good shortstop. So they were concerned about this. So there was talk, was Ricky trying to what? Was he trying to really sabotage the integration of baseball? Was he trying to put up a player who he knew would not make it? Or what was the real reason behind it? And the real reason is that Branch Rickey was committed to integrating baseball, and he did it for a couple of reasons. One, personal conviction that it was time to integrate baseball, based on his background, his upbringing, his religious family. And secondly, folks, it was pure dollars and cents. It made sense now because as Negroes were moving north and were working in the factories post-war, they had a lot of money to spend, and he was encouraging them to come to the ballpark. Come to the ballpark, and we could fill up our ballparks because we're going to have all of this interest in this one Negro player, and he was right. In 1 month, they'll make $150,000 more than they ever made once Robinson steps up to the plate. And Negro families from all around the country were coming in droves to be in the stands to support this player when he stepped up to the plate. They didn't even care if he hit a home run or not, just that he was there. And so he was representing them. By 1946-47, Negroes didn't have a lot of heroes anymore in America. Jesse Owens had won in the 1936 Olympics, but that was 10 years earlier. By the way, Jackie's brother Matt finished second in that 100-yard meter dash in Berlin, behind Jesse Owens. Joe Louis was the boxer, who was everybody's hero, but that too was starting to ebb. They needed a role model. They needed a new hero. And what better place to have that new hero than in the Major League stadiums and as a Major League ball player? There was only one Northerner on the Dodger team. The others were Southerners. They all grew up with racism and prejudices and biases. They were openly honest about they refused to play with this guy. They would have petitions. They would not sit with him. They would not play catch with him. They early on would not play cards with him. His wife, by then he was married, did not interact with the other wives. But that's going to take place over time. And then some other things are going to change as he makes an impact on the baseball field during that first season. Death threats were regular. Beer bottles were regular, thrown at him. He could not sleep at the same hotel that his other players slept at. They slept at the Chase in St. Louis. He had to go find a hotel in the Negro community. They played cards, and oftentimes during those card-playing games, they would say all sorts of things, like, I'm going to go out and kill me, to change my luck. They were afraid that their own families would reject them because they had allowed themselves to play with a Negro on their team. They were from the South. They had hardware stores. They wanted that business in the postseason and the off-the-season. Interestingly enough, even the broadcasters had trouble with Jackie Robinson. One of the greats was Red Barber. I want to show you just a little clip of him agonizing. He's the Brooklyn broadcaster. He's the Dodger, the voice of the Dodger family. Ricky tells him, we're going to integrate. Listen to what he says. Red Barber, one of the really greats. But listen to what he goes through.
Of course, it was a shock to me when Mr. Ricky told me in confidence that he was going to bring a black player. He told me this before he ever knew Robinson was coming. He told me this in March of 1945. And he didn't come in touch with Robinson himself until late that year. But I knew Mr. Ricky, when he said he was going to do something, he was going to do it. And I had to examine myself. Because Mr. Ricky gave me time to either make up my mind to broadcast properly through a very stormy period or quit. And my first reaction was, when I came home, told Lala, I said, I'm going to quit. I don't think I can go through with this. And she said, well, very wise woman. She said, you don't have to quit right now. Let's have a martini. And I began to think about it as the days went by. And I had to understand that it was by chance that I was born white. I could have been born black. I could have been born to any parents, any place, any time.
In the 1947 season, black newspapermen were not allowed in the press box. Black newspapermen who wanted to record baseball stood outside the tunnel and interviewed the players as they came outside the tunnels after the game had ended. Talk today is really about what did Jackie Robinson do for America. Well, first of all, Jackie Robinson, and this is really significant, stayed for the entire year and completed that first season with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Over time, his teammates would begin to accept him as a teammate because he would be a contributor to the ball club. He would ultimately lead them to a title and into the World Series. Ultimately, he would become the first Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball, and that was on his statistics and only that. Eventually, he would be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But what Jackie Robinson did in that first year and for the subsequent seasons was bring back to America some really important questions. In Jackie's case, it was always that character was more important than color or race. That the character of the human being is what people really respected in the end. Over time, the fans themselves saw Jackie Robinson taking an incredible amount of abuse from themselves. And over time, they realized that he went to game after game, and he was only there because he liked playing baseball, and he wanted the Dodgers to win. Character always counts more than race, always counts more than that. He taught America that money is colorblind. He taught America that money is colorblind, that regardless of your race or color, if you have the money, you can buy the ticket and get into the ballpark, and you're going to make the owners a profit. He taught them that too. He forced Americans to confront their own racism in the aftermath of World War II. How is it possible that these soldiers could give their lives, be wounded in Europe, but could not play in a ballpark in America? He forced, for the first time, and this is really true, he forced whites in Chicago and blacks in Chicago, or Philadelphia, or St. Louis, or Cincinnati, or Cleveland, or Washington, for the first time to sit in the same ballpark together. Because most of the times they sat apart. For the first time, he brought whites and blacks together into the ballpark, and he made them root for the entire team that included, now with the Dodgers, a black man. He was the second most popular man in America in 1947, in 1948, and 1949. Just for your interest, it was Bing Crosby who was the most popular. He was the most popular man, but Jackie Robinson was next. Jackie Robinson was a role model. And over time, in his first season, we see white children and black children emulating how Jackie Robinson played, how he held the bat. Jackie Robinson taught people that you could overcome all kinds of obstacles and that you could become something that nobody thought you could become. Remember, his own Negro fellow ball players didn't think he had much of a chance in the majors, he had to prove them wrong as well. And he would do that. Jackie Robinson taught us some other things. He taught us that it's okay to have pride in who you are. He taught America that it was okay to have pride in your culture, your background. And he taught America in many ways about winning. He was one who never liked to lose. He would say that again and again throughout his life, I never like to lose. So he always saw himself as, I want to be a winner. And I want to be a winner on a winning team, and in this case it was the Brooklyn Dodgers. All kinds of mysteries about Jackie Robinson, bringing him to the Brooklyn Dodgers and putting him on that field that day, April 15th, 1947. Can you imagine what was in the crowd? Can you imagine the number of people who wanted him to fail? There were people every day who said, I hope he fails. I hope he strikes out. I hope he gets hurt. I hope he sets the Negro cause back 20 years. And to go to that ballpark every day with that kind of pressure on him. Let's take a look at another clip and see what he says about this.
Winning without the suspended DeRozier would prove to be routine for Ricky's Dodgers in '47. That spring, he hired Bert Schotten to replace Leo. And despite his unusual way of dressing, Schotten kept the Dodgers on a winning track. Of course, the arrival of Jackie Robinson helped a great deal. As the Major League's first black ball player of the modern era, Jackie had come to the Dodgers at the beginning of the '47 season and brought with him an aggressive brand of play that saw him win baseball's first Rookie of the Year award. Brooklyn fans embraced Robinson for what he stood for and the manner in which he went about showing it. His determination and skill helped the Dodgers to win their first pennant since '41, and that led to another chance in the World Series and another crack at the New York Yankees. The '47 series would be the first of 6 times the Yanks and Dodgers would face each other over the next 10 years. It went the full 7 games, and to this day is best remembered for 2 plays that both went the Dodgers' way. The first came in the 4th game, when Yankee pitcher Bill Bevan's attempt at the first ever series no-hitter fell apart with 2 out in the bottom of the 9th. The result of Cookie Lavagetto's remarkable pinch hit.
The pitch swung on and a drive out for the right field corner. Henry going back. He can't get it. It's over the wall for a base hit. Here comes.
He mentioned the fact that Brooklyn fans eventually took to Jackie Robinson, and they did. School children followed him wherever he went, and there are a number of stories about him being mobbed by the fans as the season progressed. It was quite a turnaround, and he tells in his own life story, I never had it made, and he talks about that very frankly. There was many times when he jumped into a white person's car and they drove him off somewhere just to get away from the crowd. So in many ways, at several levels, Jackie Robinson affected a lot of people in America for a lot of different reasons. So that to me was really kind of, was for me anyway, particularly important. On another level though, what's the lesson that Jackie Robinson has for us today? It's the same lesson that he taught back in 1947. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to ask yourself about your biases and prejudices. You have to ask yourself about the stereotypes that you carry around and the baggage you carry around about somebody else or someone from another culture or someone of another race. You have to think about those things. You have to see the good in people and not the bad. You have to look for the good in people and not the bad. And Jackie Robinson repeated that over and over again. He said, you always have to be a model for others. So even after he leaves baseball in 1959, even after he's inducted into the Hall of Fame, he never gives up his cause for civil rights. He carries on a number of correspondences and talks with prominent civil rights activists, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, number of presidents, always talking about the fact that when I look at the stadium, where are the other blacks? Where are the coaches? Where are the managers? Where are the umpires? And he said something that I thought was always interesting. Nobody's free until the last person is free. And nobody is free until the last person is free was kind of his motto. He dies tragically, by the way, at the age of 53. He had diabetes. He was blind. And so in many ways, his legacy, I think, has been forgotten by some, but not all. 1997, in honor of his integrating baseball, and again, he did it single-handedly. His number 42 was retired throughout the league. There was a number of celebrations, a number of players wore number 42, including Southern players who had once opposed him. The photos that I showed you of the various ball players shaking his hand, they were managers, and those were staged photographs. Those very managers were the ones who had called him the worst names. Those are the managers who refused to have their team come out. And only when the commissioner said to them, you're going to play this game, and you're going to make a public apology of some kind, were they willing to see themselves standing next to Jackie Robinson, shaking his hand or holding a bat with him. For many of them, they did not forgive nor forget Jackie Robinson. He turned their world, which had been completely white, upside down. Upside down. There's a movie that he made, the Jackie Robinson story. So I'll show you a clip of that. The question comes up, did he want to quit? Now, a day went by, and Jackie Robinson did come home and talk to his wife, Ray, and say, I think I've had it. And she would say, no, you haven't. You're going to go out and play the very next day. Many a time he wanted to quit because of the abuse that he endured those first few months.
That's the way to go.
Had a lot of balls thrown at him. And when he was asked in a press conference, what do you intend to do when they throw the ball at you? He said, duck.
Hey, Barney, win this game and I'll give you a great big kiss. Oh, what's the matter with you guys? You think I don't mean it?
Hey, Robinson, where is it to make the Holloway belong? Very good job, Robinson. Come on, let's go.
Greetings from Ebbets Field. They call it Big League Baseball, folks, because you've got to be bigger and better to stay up here. That's the problem confronting Jackie Robinson at this very minute as he goes to bat for the first time in a big league game. Oh, yes, I know he's done all right in training. I've seen the papers, too. But that was only practice. From now on, it's for keeps. There's a little man upstairs in the press box who's known, among other things, as the official scorer. He watches like a hawk. He marks down everything. He'll make a mark for every move that Jackie Robinson makes, good or bad. And not only the official scorer's eyes are on the Negro rookie, the whole world is waiting. Everybody wants to know if Branch Rickey has made a mistake. Will they be able to say, I told you so? Let's see.
Stadium after stadium, game after game, that incredible pressure to perform and to be as good, if not better, than your fellow teammates who are all white and who have given you a lot of abuse for the better part of the season. So how would you react under that pressure? What would you do in those circumstances? Would it be easier to simply have said, I've had enough, and left the stadium never to come back? Or do you have enough commitment in your own personal beliefs, in your own values, to say, I think it's worth it. I'm going to see it to the end. I'm going to make a difference. Well, that's the path that Jackie Robinson took. And baseball in America was a lot better off for it. Questions? Any questions?
His number 42 is on every major league outfield fence.
Right.
Every ball.
Do all of you know who Mr. Moore is? Do you know Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore, stand up for a minute. Monty was a broadcaster for the Oakland A's and is really a baseball aficionado. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's quite an event. Miss Medley, one of our former instructors. And by the way, it was only 1953 that you went to college. Now, your question. He does all right. He actually he has a series of slumps in those first few months. He went with a sore elbow. He did not go to training. Although he did all right training, he didn't do the very best. Again, he didn't have a uniform with him. When Richie takes the team to Havana to have the training, all the major leaguers who were the high-paid players stayed at the Hotel Nacion in Havana, which was like a 5-star hotel. Then the second team players played at was then a newly built military academy. He was the lowest tier level. The $5,000 contract was the minimum contract, and in that clause, no endorsements, as the other players had. So he was bare, we would say, the minimum wage, and he was told, you need to find your own hotel, and you need to pay for your own meals. So if you really want to make this team, you're going to have to work at it awfully hard. So that happened to him even throughout the training as well. Now, in 1947, you could buy a house for $7,000. That was Levittown, by the way. Those are the first tract homes in America. So $5,000 was his base salary. One more note about Ricky, Branch Rickey. He had talked to Jackie Robinson several times, and he laid down some very, very, very firm rules, okay? Rule number 1 is you will never get angry on the field. And that will only come when your other ball players respect you. You can get angry then, never before. You will never throw a ball or a bat at those people who are calling you names. And that was it. That was pretty hard to do. Rule number 2, you will not socialize. He was not allowed to socialize with either whites or Negroes. Rule number 3 is you will not go out and go to any bars at night, taverns, or restaurants. He had his own clause that this is what time you'll be at the hotel whenever you find one, and this is what time I expect you to be in bed. So Branch Rickey kept him on a very, very tight leash. No endorsements. Eventually, he'll be able to sign his name to programs. Eventually, he will be able to sign his name with cereal boxes. And eventually, because of that, his salary will increase. But Rickey knew that there would be no distractions. His only focus was that ball field, that diamond, and then right before the season starts, he was going to be a shortstop, and Rickey says, no, I've changed your mind. I'm going to make you a first baseman. He had never played first base before. And so he changes the position he plays. He gets some coaching about his hitting, and then the rest is he does awfully well, Ellen, for the rest of the season. Hits around 347, 357 at one point, leads the league and runs batted in, was on his way to making some pretty good home runs, that sort of thing. Proved to be a very good fielder, proved to really upset the pitchers, stole a lot of bases, and becomes an all-around outstanding baseball player. Later in life, Rickey said, I already knew that. He had an incredible athletic ability. In college, he picked up a tennis racket and went all the way to the semifinals and the national finals without ever having played the game. That was the kind of guy Rickey wanted. Intelligent, angry, but turned the anger into the stadium, and it's somebody who was versatile, and somebody who had character, and somebody who would rise above everything that he had to contend with in 1947. And by the way, the threats were 1951 as well. So throughout his playing career, he did receive those letters. If you come to our field, you're allowed to get killed. Jackie Robinson is an amazing person, folks. We owe a lot to him, and the civil rights movement owes a lot to him as well. Well, once again, I want to thank Richard, his chat group, for sponsoring me for these talks, and Dr. Carlson is here, and Steve, thank you for your introduction.